Hello everyone and welcome back to today's Tomorrow Talk. I'm your host, Joe Leonarchis. Joining me on today's show are my special guests, Ellie Stuck and Allison Turner. Thank you both for being here today. In today's society, personality is everything, and a new online test called an Enneagram Test that has been making its way around social media may now be able to accurately tell what kind of personality you really have. Participants answer a number of questions, and then, gauged on their responses, they are assigned one of 9 types. To get a better understanding of the test, Allison, Ellie, and myself all took a look at the test. So now let's share our results. So Allison, according to the test, what type would you say you are?
According to the test, I am a type 3, which is known as the achiever, but it can also be known as the performer or the chameleon.
Okay.
According to the test, I am a type 2, which is the helper.
Okay. I was the type 7, which is the enthusiast. It basically means I'm very spontaneous and scattered, and I kind of don't want to miss out on something fun that could be happening. And happiness is very important to me. So were there any other types you could see yourself as?
I could see myself also as a type 1, which is called the perfectionist. I think that the achiever and the perfectionist can actually go hand in hand because both want to be successful and be high achievers. Growing up, I wanted to always get 100s on things. I hated getting a B. Even an A-. I cried one time when I got an A- on something because I just wanted to get an A, specifically a 100. And I was always told by my dance teachers that I was a perfectionist. So I didn't really know which one I was going to fit more, but looking at my results, I'm definitely more of the achiever.
Okay.
So I also feel like the helper and the perfectionist go hand in hand because when I help somebody, like if I'm assisting one of my residents, I am an RA. If I'm assisting one of my residents, I want the perfect outcome. I want them to have the best outcome possible. If they have a roommate disagreement, I want them to get whatever they want. If they want to move out, I want them to have that. If they want to just have a mediation and talk it out, I want them to have that.
Okay.
So I want the perfect results for everything, for them, and for everybody that I help.
Okay, awesome. Allison is a type 3. Would you say that fits her perfectly?
Definitely. If we're going by the test, Allison is definitely the achiever. She can, as she said, it's also called the chameleon. She can, take herself and put herself into any situation and fit right in. She can jump on camera. She can jump behind the camera. She can jump into the control room. She can talk to almost anybody. And she just has this wonderful, personality of, I'm going to do the very best I can. I'm going to get the highest grade I possibly can. And she's just she's just an all-around amazing person because by, working with her, she actually pushes me to strive to do better. Because if I see her working so hard, it's going to encourage me to work even harder so that I can get the same grades,
Yeah,
or better.
So would you say that she matches her type as well?
I would say that Ellie is definitely the helper. She's an RA, so she has to help out her students, but she doesn't do it because it's her job. She also wants to help them. And she also helps me. She's always there. If I have a question, if I need to get camera equipment, she's always there for me. She's always willing to help me out. So I would say she's definitely a helper.
That's awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing. We are now going to take a short break, but when we come back, we will discuss whether this test is fact or fiction. Welcome back from the break. Now that we have talked about our individual results of the test, let's talk about whether there is any validity to it or not. So let's start with Allison and hear her viewpoint. Allison, how do you think the Enneagram can help people in their everyday lives?
I think that knowing what other people's types are can really help. Now I know that Ellie is the helper, so I can read up on characteristics of what a helper is, and when I'm going to her with a problem or something, I know, hey, she wants to help people, she likes to help people, or is at least good at it. And now I know you're the enthusiast and you're very spontaneous and you like to keep yourself busy and doing things, whereas I'm not spontaneous at all. So it helps me kind of gauge how to deal with people. And I think that can work in the workplace too, because now you know how to communicate in a team, because that's really important.
Absolutely. I think that is very easy to do when you know someone else's type, but maybe it wouldn't be so easy if you didn't know their type, you know. But how do you think astrology relates to the Enneagram?
So I'm very into both the Enneagram and astrology. Both of them are interesting because they're based off of generalized information. Like astrology, you're supposed to fit into your astrological sign based off of just when you were born. And like you're supposed to fit that mold. And with the Enneagram, you're supposed to fit the mold of your type just based off of general answers to general questions. So they're both kind of related, that you're supposed to fit into that. And they can also kind of low-key support stereotypes too, because like, oh, I'm a stereotypical Aquarius, I guess, based off of things that I do. And then I can also be seen as a stereotypical type 3 because I always want to achieve high results.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Allison. Let's take a look at that clip.
Though is that the Enneagram can change your life. It's the single most effective personal growth, leadership development tool that I've come across. It explains so much. It explains why you have the strengths that you have, why you have the limitations that you have, and where you get stuck. It explains dilemmas that you'll you'll hit in your life. It'll even describe why certain relationships are easier than others.
So Ellie, would you say that from the supporting video that we just watched, would you say there are any statements that are kind of weak, or I guess lack backing up, and I guess why?
I would definitely say that when the gentleman stated, he was like, well, this explains, you know, your strengths and your weaknesses, and it explains why these relationships aren't working out for you. And I'm like, you know, maybe that's like, how does the Enneagram, like, explain to me why, say, you know, my former best friend is turning, like, you know, screaming at me constantly now, and isn't how does that explain that? How does that, and, you know, it's not, and, you know, I'm glad you brought up astrology earlier, because it's not like anybody can go, you know, oh, it's not my fault because I'm a Gemini, you know, oh, I'm sorry, I'm like this, I'm just a Scorpio, you know, whatever. That absolutely makes no sense, and you can't use it really as an excuse. Or, like, you can't use it as an explanation or an excuse, because, you know, either with astrology or the Enneagram test. Because if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this relationship failed because I'm a type 3 and he's a type 7, and that's why we just didn't work out, that to me does not make any sense at all. There are probably so many more underlying issues. It's not just your relationship didn't work out because your types didn't match up. It doesn't make sense.
I agree with that. Why do you all think people are interested in taking the test in the first place?
I think that people like naturally want to belong to something, and they like the feeling of belonging, and taking this test and getting put into a type with a bunch of other people that have that same type, it gives you something to belong to, and you can relate to other people, so you don't feel as lonely. Plus, we're selfish. We like to read about ourselves.
It's very true.
I mean, I think just because it is so vague and it's not super specific, people love generalized statements about themselves. And I mean, in today's day and age of Ancestry and 23andMe and now the Enneagram test, like, everybody's like, oh, I can learn more about myself, why I am the way I am, because everybody's looking for that free or cheap way of finding out more about themselves without paying money for, like, a therapist.
Yeah, everyone definitely wants to know
therapy is
more
expensive,
about themselves.
so.
Yeah. I think that we can all agree that there is a lot to consider on this topic. Coming up after the break, we look at the opposing side of the Enneagram test, so stick around. Thanks for staying tuned to the program. Now that we have heard the argument for Enneagrams, let's look at an opposing view, starting with this clip from the SciShow Psych YouTube channel.
The current form of the Enneagram, which started to become more well-known about 50 years ago, puts everyone in one of 9 categories. For example, you could be a type 1, called either the reformer or the perfectionist, depending on whom you ask. Supposedly, type 1s are committed to idealistic principles and tend toward perfectionism. Or you might be a type 5, the investigator or observer, someone who's perceptive and intellectual. Or maybe you're a type 8, the challenger or protector your friend mentioned, who takes charge and follows their instincts. In the Enneagram, the 9 personality types are arranged into a circle. Each type is a point on the outside of the circle, and the points are connected by lines that represent how someone with a given personality type might act under different circumstances. For example, when you're stressed, you might be expected to take on some of the features of one of the types that's connected to yours. The idea is that each person will have one type that fits them best. Supposedly, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. There's no best or worst type to have, and people are encouraged to try to become the best version of their personality type.
Allison, what are your views on the opposing video?
I think that the opposing video is interesting, but I don't think she truly understood like what they were trying to say like with the Enneagram, because yes, you do get put into your type, but the point of the Enneagram, as she did mention, was to understand your type and how your type works with the other ones. But she also went on to say that in certain situations, she will act differently than her type, which is the whole point of the Enneagram. Like, I'm not always going to act like a type 3. Like, type 3s are chameleons, so, like, I will act differently. But there are certain situations where I will be different, so you can't just typify yourself in that way, like she was saying.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she said something about how everybody has a little bit of each type in them, and it's just really up to the situation and you adapting to it, to which one you'd like to focus on, I guess. So a big reason the Enneagram is so popular is because all of the answers and the types for everyone are pretty relatable. This could also actually be its biggest flaw, so I was wondering if y'all could comment on that.
So most definitely, with it being super relatable to a lot of different people. Like, I understand what Allison is saying with the whole, you're supposed to fit into different types. You're supposed to, your main type is, your main type, but you're supposed to fit into all the types and everything. And I'm like, so don't advertise it as a personalized, specific test that's supposed to tell you your personality. And, it's, when they were talking in the supporting view, it's like, he's like, it solves so many problems. And I'm like, not really. And it's, because, I may be, taking the test, I may, type 2 helper. But then I'm sitting here and I'm going, yeah, it's a fun little test, but I already knew I liked helping people. I already knew that I was a little bit of a perfectionist. I already knew, a bunch of this stuff about myself. You didn't tell me anything new. You didn't tell me, and as she said in the video, it's vague. And I get why it's vague, because there are only 9 types and it's supposed to be super relatable to everybody. But at the same time, if I'm taking a personality test and it's supposed to be backed up by science, which the Enneagram test is not, it has very little science to support it. It's hard to agree with something that doesn't have the science to back it up.
I hear you. So were there any characteristics of your type that you feel didn't match you? Because I know for me, as a type 7, it said they struggle with relationships, but I actually feel like most of the relationships in my life are completely fine. I don't think I'm struggling. So I would say that's something that I don't quite agree with, that related to my type.
There weren't any characteristics that I felt weren't right for me. I did learn a lot more about myself. Like, one thing that type 3s typically do is suppress their feelings and emotions, and they don't like to talk about it. I genuinely thought that I was pretty good at that, but like looking back on it and thinking about it, I realized I don't like to talk about my emotions. I don't like to cry in front of people. I don't like to tell even the people that I'm closest to. I don't like to let them in to that part of my life. And that was something that I learned from the Enneagram.
Okay. Were there any characteristics you feel
I mean,
didn't match you?
Like, as I said, this was so vague. Like, I already knew I enjoyed helping people. I already knew I put others before myself. I already knew that I want, the best outcome for everybody. It didn't really show me anything new. It didn't show me anything that I didn't already know about myself.
Okay.
Um,
So I guess it
I
didn't
wouldn't
show
say-
you any.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so I guess it didn't show you anything that you didn't agree with?
I wouldn't say, okay, did I agree with it? Yes. Do I believe in it? No.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you both for sharing your thoughts and being on the show today. For those of you at home, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more content like this. For today's Tomorrow Talk, I'm Jolene Arcus, and we'll see you all next time.